Deeper into doing less. It was good. Welcome. Shout out to Mayor Mamdani. Shout out to the New York Mayor Mamdani. Just a few months into the mayorship, um, he's proven to be a force politically. Shout out to the three new, or the many new congressional seats that have been won. I think three in New York in particular. Um, Shout out to Brad Lander. Shout out to the other two that I don't know their names. I don't really talk about politics directly too much on this show because I'm interested in other things. That's really the biggest reason. That's the whole reason. I I think politics runs through everything all the time. I think politics is implied in a lot of the things that I talk about. I think that politics is an expression of the human condition. Our politics relates to our politics. The word politics speaks to. Sometimes we misconstrue. This is why words are important. Sometimes the definition of politics, we want to say electoral politics, but we use the word politics without specifying electoral politics. Politics speaks to our shared social condition. It speaks to our shared agreement about what are inside the boundaries of acceptable behavior, what are outside the boundaries of acceptable behavior. Politics lead to laws and they lead to social views and all that. But that's all related to what is. So for instance, the reason on this show we do talk about human rights is because we have a politics that's grounded in what is. The politics isn't grounded in some vague, esoteric thing. It's not grounded in anything other than what is. So it's grounded in the fact that, for instance, humans need to eat. We need food. We need water. We need housing. That's what the politics is grounded in. When I say housing, we need safety. Is the old model of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Um, we have a politics grounded in the human condition, in our shared humanity, in the need to respect our shared commonalities and also respect our differences. The paradox inherent in that it's one thing that societies kind of swing in different directions and in different ways, but we know that it is problematic when you fail to notice our common reality and our shared experience. And it's also problematic to overemphasize the shared, or to force it, or to require the shared experience, and to define things that way, and to, what I'm saying, to diminish or penalize individuality. This is a bit of a paradox in the practice of like how we experience this world and how we engage in politics. But yeah, I don't talk about direct like parliamentary, Capitol Hill politics too much, because I feel like it's that level of discourse is really well traveled. There's a lot of people always talking about, the new candidates, and talking about Trump, and talking about electoral politics. I think that there's a much deeper thing underneath, and what comes out, in the electoral politics is dependent, um, and or is anchored to like this other thing that I'm talking about, this other realm of like how we see ourselves, how we talk about ourselves, right? What's that show with the women? It's like famous for like having the women all dressed in this like church garb and being subjugated. That's a fictional show. I can't remember the name right now. But of course, we had times in history where our societies our societies subjugate women, and I want to say that so you see laws that don't support women's, access to the workforce, or laws that want to take away women's right to franchise. We're seeing people talk about this more and more. Women's right to their own bodily autonomy, right to choose and shit like this. That that thing is called politics. We'll have political debates on that, but underneath that is just a raw statement of fact of how we view women. Are women equal citizens just as men? Are women equally intelligent, capable, or do we have a story of a separation? I'm interested in those stories. Um, so, for instance, I just don't think you have a society where women are denied voting rights when the ground underlying story is that women are equal to men. I don't think it's possible. In order to justify any sort of a political move to disenfranchise women, it has to be grounded in a separation, a narrative, a false narrative, a mythology about women being inferior, being less capable, less intelligent, less logical, less something. The men are up here, the women are up here, and so that's the only way that's possible. And so again, I'm interested in the stories because the stories predate and are the precursor to any sort of political arrangements. The political arrangements, the laws can show up in all kinds of ways, and they are dependent on the stories that we are being told. That's why I go at the journalism structure so hard. Journalism is another human endeavor, like the politics that we talked about, the electoral politics is a human endeavor, which in its best form, the way that they market themselves, the role they play in society is a kind of secular truth teller. They are not interested in the mystical stuff. That's fine. I kind of get that, but they are interested in giving language to reality, which is to say they are giving language, creating the stories that we tell as we understand what the world is. When the ICE officer shot Alex Preddy, that protester in Minnesota, or the other ICE officer shot the woman behind the wheel of the car. What happened there? What is reality? There was a big scandal at CBS at what is it at 60 Minutes, right? The guy left saying that Barry Weiss insisted on a different story. They insisted on the story of that the woman was trying to run over the ICE officer, right? They insisted on trying to tell people that it was justified. And this brings me to the do less thing, right? Doing less, because if you look at what's that guy's name? Scott Pelley? Is that his name? The guy who left 60 Minutes. Scott Pelley, I think. He says straight away they had this big back and forth that Barry Weiss was insistent on a narrative that made ICE look good, that justified the murder, that made Trump look good. This woman is now not just at CBS; she's the head of CNN, I believe, the editorial stuff at CNN. So all these companies are being merged and being bought, and people are someone like Barry Weiss is an example of the doing less. There was something I saw where Barry Weiss said she started off with her blog called The Free Press, and I saw something where she said, I believe she did say this, where she views her role as not a traditional journalism kind of role. She views her role as it's important for her to protect America, save America from woke and from DEI, and of course from pro-Palestine, from people who are trying to stop genocide perpetrated by Israel. That's her role. Her role is very active. This is a departure from what you think an executive director of a major news organization would be, or you think that the mythology was and has been for a very long time that they want to give language to reality. It's just the facts and all this stuff. But she's an activist, and she's an activist in a very powerful role across multiple companies now. You can tell it has nothing to do with merit, has nothing to do with her ability. It has nothing to do with her commitment to truth or accuracy. um, and so she's completely gutted CBS. She's fired several of the best people there. And at CNN's going through similar transformations. And the point, of course, is that while you and I might notice this now, generations from now, people won't notice. They will turn on CBS, they will turn on CNN. These will just be there. They will be funded and they will be present. They will be giving language to reality. They will be articulating reality for people, and they will create our understanding about what is good, about what is wrong. and and people will be motivated. So I even saw today on Facebook this this woman on Twitter was ranting several posts about Zohar Mamdani, about this recent win, about the 3-for-3 sweep that he did with the new members, and they were saying it's war. The gloves are off. It's war. This is a war. Mamdani is waging war. We have to get dirty, is what she said. We have to get dirty. And of course, this is a Zionist woman who's spent the last 2 years lying and covering for Israel, covering for Netanyahu, lying. She's saying that there's no starvation in Gaza, justifying everything. Her role, she sees it, is to justify absolutely everything. And here now, for some reason, it's gloves off. Somehow it's further. She's taking it a step further. Whatever she's been doing before, that was with the gloves on. Whatever she was doing before, that was clean. Being a genocide denier, that was clean. It's about to get dirty. Because what? Because a few people won some congressional seats. And it as I look at this woman, the story in her head, a long time ago, she decided that she's on the right team. A long time ago, she decided that it is her job to be very active every day and commit herself to justifying violence and genocide, justifying her favorite country, Israel. And because she's on the right team, the lies all make sense. The distortions make sense. The Hasbara, the manipulation makes sense. Because she's on the right team, Mamdani is a brown-skinned person who says, there should have been a ceasefire and people need to observe ceasefires, and said that the war criminal might be arrested or should be arrested if he ever steps foot in New York. She's very active. It's wartime against that. And this is why she has to, you've got to do less, right? She believes that the world needs this. She thinks that she's a soldier on a mission, doing the work for her team, for her story, for her identity. And the world doesn't need that. The world would be much better if she would stop. And in fact, everyone would be better. Everyone's safer if she would stop. The lies that she's saying about Mamdani, this war rhetoric and this approach, Jews would be safer. Everyone would be safer. We don't need it. But she's lost in her story. She's lost in her story. It's like, I don't know where it is now. I don't know where it is now, but there was a time when Fox News would go hard on drag shows. They were looking at the trans conversation. They conflated it all with all kinds of stuff. So they conflated it with drag shows. The drag queens are dangerous now, and started doing exposés on drag queen, story hour, and little things like this. And that motivated people. They said that the world, like, people were being told a story about their entire world being in danger and their children being in danger. And they get up and they got to do something. And you'd see this, like, we got to take our country back. We got to act. So, guys would get up, and this is the whole thing is what they talk about with, like, the political language eventually producing action. Because people, if you keep saying, for instance, that children are in danger, when they aren't, well, then people are going to act. And then, of course, in another case where you have children very much in danger in terms of Israel's approach to violence and approach to power, approach to war, like they're policy approach. These people don't want to give accurate language to that. They obscure that language. They don't tell us what is. We don't get a story. They don't want you to be inflamed and angry in that direction. So we're being corralled. We're being given stories. We have stories in our heads. And those are moving us. And when I bring up Wu Wei doesn't talk about these things in particular. Like, I'm bringing all this stuff in a very political and American context, but doing less gives us an opportunity to actually pull back and realize that the actions we're taking, sometimes they may feel urgent, they may cause anxiety, but that they aren't as necessary as we thought. The world still spins. Your goals are still within grasp. Even your goals, your sense of your goals have to do with the story that you were given. That if you detach from that story, you may realize that none of that is necessary, that all this energy, sometimes violence energy, sometimes mischievous and like abusive energy, a willingness to contort reality in favor of your story. You can do less and it's still fine. You know what I mean? We can all function without it. Further, when you do less, you realize that your energy is so sacred, actually. And when you can actually, by being so busy being so busy waking up and saying, it's time to attack Zohran Mamdani. I know that it's the right thing. You've agreed, you've made that commitment so long ago, you never go back and check and update it and say, does that still make sense? So now you're just acting. Stop, take a breather, do less. Then you can update the foundational beliefs which were driving the actions in the first place. Act less, do less, pay attention to the stories, pay attention to who you are and what is. Try to ground your story in reality rather than in anything else. Anything else. You get to reclaim your focus. You get to reclaim your energy. It's an incredible power move to do less in a world that tells you have to do more, in a world that tells you to grind and grind. And no amount of money is ever enough. This moving target. Oh man, when I make this amount of money, I'll be good. And you just see people, you get there, you keeps going. So to reclaim in a world that tells you that you're never enough, it's never enough, you got to act, you got to take back this and be careful of these threats and these people over here, and you act and let's very litigious, and let's reclaim your focus, do less, the energy and the time spent from doing less action can be spent in like a self-awareness of the story. And it's a powerful assertion of your power. It's a powerful assertion of your power in the context of a world that tells you you must keep acting too slow, while everyone is constantly trying to take the next action. And it's like shaking up a bottle of soda, shaking that bottle up, and just all this action, people acting based on the different stories in their heads. Many of them arcane, old stories that really need to be updated. Like these Cold Warriors. Russia, wah, Russia. And all these other people bugging out. You have to do less, and you'll find you reclaim that power and that energy, and you get to refocus it with new purpose and genuine purpose defined by you from a more genuine place and an intuition. And that won't be possible without the first doing less. It seems that, people get burnt out over this stuff. You get burnt out, and it really does require first a shedding before you can actually move, you know what I'm saying, in a way that is entirely in your interest. And that's why we talk about the stories. That's why we talk about identity and all that stuff on this podcast. And because you kind of have to notice that this is a thing rather than doing. Yeah. So the Wu Wei, this is again a Taoist principle. Everything we've been doing, I've been applying it to like very modern political sensibilities and trying to talk about how we live in this moment. But Wu Wei is an ancient Taoist philosophy, and so underneath all of that is just a truth about balance, and is a truth about um, the oneness and the balance of this universe. You know, we're all very distracted by the different labels and the parties and the way we've categorized the world, and there is balance, and you don't have to fizz, and you don't have to be active. Sometimes rest and pause and reflection is an action. You need to categorize that as an action so that you can actually accept it as such. Sometimes it's helpful to think of it that way. Um, and it's a powerful action. And when done well, when grounded and reorganized in your best interest, when your mind and your stories are grounded, you map a story of reality that maps closely to reality. That has, you know, it's not an old story. It's not something you inherited. It's not something you're doing because your identity group is doing. It's not something you're doing because your father and your uncle insisted that you do it and you picked up that habit. Um, it's like your own experience. When you do that, every action you take after that is powerfully yours. It's powerfully yours. You've empowered yourself when you do less. You've empowered. Paradoxically, it might seem like doing less, but you're actually doing more, yo. So that's the message for today. And like and subscribe the video. Holla to the channel. Look at the channel. And I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.